All right, Tracy. Thank you so much for taking time. Very excited to speak with you today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know you very well since we went to the same class at Y Combinator in 2012. But for the audience who don't know, if you could tell us a little bit about your background or career, that'd be a great start.
Hello, my name is Tracy Young. I co-founded a company called PlanGrid, which built construction software. I ran that for nearly 10 years, and then I was a visiting partner at Y Combinator for 1 year. And then I decided to start my second startup, TigerEye, and we've been building TigerEye for the last 2 years. My background was in construction engineering, and so my first startup solved the problem that I had in my last job, which we built construction software. And TigerEye is really the product that I wish I had while I was building PlanGrid. And so that's all I know how to do is build tools for my last job.
Awesome. That's awesome. Then yeah, maybe let me ask you a few questions about PlanGrid because I'm very curious about it. But yeah, maybe you could share a little bit about why you started PlanGrid originally. That'd be great.
PlanGrid started as a fun project. My co-founders, so I think everyone thought it could be a big business except for me. I just thought it was this fun thing we were doing together as friends. And then we made our first like $10 million. And that was probably about 4 or 5 years into the company. And I remember looking at our financials, I was like, wow, we can build a gigantic company. And we kept going, and then eventually we got to 100 million in ARR, and that's when I stepped down as CEO and passed the baton. And by this point, we were 6 months into being acquired by Autodesk, and so we just passed the baton over. And it was like this next phase from 100 million to 500 million is not what I'm experienced in, and there's other people that do this better. And so it was nice to be able to exit the company that way in good hands.
Got it. That's awesome. So did you start in 2000, maybe 11 or 12 PlanGrid originally? Do you remember? Did you start before you got into YC?
Yeah. We've been working on PlanGrid since 2010. And then we got into Y Combinator whenever that was, end of 2011, and then did the winter 2012 batch. And PlanGrid was just the thing we wanted to use. Steve Jobs announces the first generation iPad. It was so obvious to us that construction would be disrupted by this beautiful new hardware. It's a fully powered computer that's lightweight enough to take out into the field. It was very obvious, like construction software belonged on mobile devices. And then we would launch on the iOS Store, we would launch on Google Play, we would launch on Windows Store, and we just kept building. And then now the product is wrapped up into Autodesk Construction Cloud.
Got it. And when you were in YC, do you think you already had a product market fit when you got into YC, or before then? Like what point made you think that you got a product market fit?
Yeah, I mean it's so crazy that we're probably the biggest product market fit success story in the history of Y Combinator. We just nailed it on day one. It was such a simple problem we're solving. We're like, there's a lot of paper in construction sites. Let's put all that paper onto like this device. And that was the whole business. And then, then we were doing cool things on top of it. We were using AI and machine learning to automatically link one blueprint to the other and one detail call to the other. We would automatically extract interesting information from the blueprints and then display it for our users. You could track your issues. Then we started laying more stuff on top of it. But the initial concept was so simple: digitize the construction record set, make it available on a mobile device through the cloud.
Got it. And then how did you get your first customers? Remember, I know it's already like 10 years ago or something, but
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
have already connections, or did you outbound, or remember how you got those customers?
I do think this is why YC is always pushing for domain experts on the team, right? Brian and I, who you know really well, we were construction engineers. We had been working in the field for several years, long enough to make a bunch of friends in the field. And the interesting thing about construction projects is you're so loyal to the project, but once a project is over, it's not that hard to just go to another company and work on another project. And so by this point, a lot of the friends that we had worked with on specific projects were now at different companies. And so I would say our first 20 users of PlanGrid were people we had worked with on a job site before.
Got it. That's awesome.
We just asked our friends to use it. Of course, in 2011 and 2012, no businesses, and certainly not construction projects and construction firms, were deploying iPads. I mean, Apple had limits on how much they could produce these things. So they had limits at the store. You can only go in and buy 3 of them at a time. And so anytime we showed PlanGrid to people, they would say, okay, that's really cool, but I don't have an iPad. And so what we did was we maxed out our credit cards, and we, you have to be very confident this is going to work because this is a very expensive thing we're doing and it's very risky. We maxed out our credit cards. We bought the first 20 iPads and we just gave it to our friends. We're like, okay, how about we give you we'll loan you the iPad and then you use PlanGrid. And then that's how we got it into their hands.
Wow, that's awesome. And then did you just continue to grow like by organic demand, or like did you try to do more sales and marketing, or like what was the kind of journey maybe around YC or right after YC?
So it's so interesting about PlanGrid's business because we were definitely a B2B enterprise software company, except that there was this consumer component about construction projects and construction sites, and certainly a company built from the ground up by mobile, right? And so people would buy their first iPhone, their first iPad, and they would search. If you're a construction professional, you'd search construction on the App Store. It's very natural. And then the first thing that popped up was PlanGrid for many years. And so there's this natural like inbound motion of the business where people were just winning App Store SEO. And so people they were signing up, and there's a freemium model of PlanGrid where they were just signing up and using us for free, thousands every week of downloads and like uploads. And so we built a field sales team to go after those folks and just call them. It's like, hey, I just saw you downloaded PlanGrid. What are you using it for? Like, can I learn more about your project? Oh, this is a $1 billion project. Why don't I come over to your job site and show your team and talk about how we might be able to help you? So we had this like free inbound motion that came in really through App Store SEO. And then we built a regional field team that went out to the projects, and we did so many things on the marketing side. We were really active in events. By the time I left Autodesk in 2020, they were doing 300 events a year. So maybe 12 to 20 of them were like national, big, gigantic events. And the rest of them were local contractors, like events, like local breakfasts and like local golf tournaments, or wherever they were at and whatever they were doing, we would be there. We would go to the trade unions and the local universities and like throw events there. We had a very popular like our event, which was called Beers for Builders. And we just threw a bar party. It was like, and specifically would choose bars that were right by big job sites. And we would like blast out, flyers. It's like, come to our bar party after work. And it's like a bunch of tired construction guys, right? And it was very natural for them to just descend on our bar party for free beers. So we did events like that. Our reps we basically did everything to get in front of contractors, right? People in hard hats and safety boots. And we would fill up boxes that said PlanGrid with fresh donuts. And they would just walk onto the job site with the proper protective gear, right?
Yep.
And drop it off. Then you're hungry, you're coming back in the job site trailer, and you see this box that says PlanGrid with a card that says, hey, if you want better food, just invite me to give you a demo during lunch. Like, we're just asking for 30 minutes. I'll bring in sandwiches, I'll bring in pizzas, I'll bring in burritos, whatever you guys want, I'll bring you guys lunch. Because we knew that construction people were always hungry because they're always on their feet working.
They're literally hungry. That's awesome. Cool. Has the kind of the target audience changed during the journey? Like, did you start reaching out more like smaller firms in the beginning and start reaching out more like real enterprise organizations, or has that always been almost same?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think it was less about the company size, because it was all about construction projects. And on a construction project, you can have like a very big general contracting firm with like thousands of employees, but you can also have like the 20-person painting shop, and that's their whole company on the job site painting all the rooms, right? And there's all these other subcontractors, either SMB, mid-market, or enterprise, but they're all over the place depending on just, their trade specialty. It was, for us, segmentation mattered more at the like, are they in the field? Are they in the field wearing hard hats? And we used to say like, we built software for people who take showers at night. And then there's also a subset of construction profiles that are in the office. They take showers in the morning. These are like the operational managers in the headquarters office, and maybe they're overseeing like multiple projects, but their boots never get dirty, right? And so we really focused on how money flowed through a job site. We knew that we couldn't sell to corporate headquarters because there was all this red tape, it just was clear to us we weren't going to do well with that crowd, but we could really understand the pain points of the people in the field. And so our product, when someone in the field saw it, they loved it. And if they used it, it's because it helped them do their jobs. And so that was a more important separation for us, but it did change. So what's really interesting is I think in 2011 to 2014, let's say, all of the buying decision was in the field. Foremans and superintendents were just swiping their credit cards to pay for PlanGrid. And then I think enough time went by, and by 2015, we're talking billions of dollars of venture capital money had been poured into construction tech. And so suddenly the folks, the managers in home office, the people who take showers in the morning, they're like, wait a second, I should be evaluating technology. I should be choosing what gets deployed in the field. So all the buying power shifted to the home office. And this was a change that we didn't expect. And certainly my biggest learning is you can find product market fit, but you can also lose it overnight because the world changes and your market changes and your competition changes. And for us, the buying decision shifted, and that was a huge change that affected us.
Wow, that's crazy. Did you change anything? Like, what was the kind of reaction? Like, how did you try to regain the product market fit?
Yeah. So we didn't successfully change fast enough. And this is one of the reasons why we had to sell the company. I think like the acquisition was for a big number. It's very shiny. And I think it's, seen as a success story. But what we don't talk about in acquisitions is the only reason I sold is because I didn't think I could win. There's a competitive component that we don't talk about enough. And so probably around 2015, there was this shift to like the buying decision being in the office. And really what that meant for our product was we needed to stop focusing on the field because the field's going to ask for tools that help them build better. And then there's a whole set of other functionality like admin consoles and like tracking usage. And they're more enterprisey features for the corporate buyer that's never on the job site. Well, this is like now a different profile. And we were so arrogant. Maybe it wasn't arrogant. We were certainly naive. We just didn't want to build software for them. Like we so wanted to build software for the blue collar worker that we neglected and we just refused to basically move upstream towards the enterprise. And that hurt us because the number one player in construction today, Procore, was very, very good at selling to the CEO and COO and CIO in the office, right? And they really had a suite of products that allowed, stuff like allowing people to fine tune the permissions of like what people can and cannot see. Whereas our philosophy was it's the same job site. Everyone should have all the information, right? But that role-based access control is really important to certain buyers, and we just didn't move fast enough that direction. So that's what I should have done is probably go towards where it hurt. We knew that in order to build out these enterprise features, we needed to hire a brand new team, because these aren't mobile first products. So it was just like a different set of muscles, and also a different sales team who could talk to these corporate buyers. We had a sales team that we built that was really good of just like walking on site and showing people PlanGrid. So it would have taken just better execution to have made it happen. But certainly it would start at the CEO level of just, this is the new direction. We're going to actually shift our focus to the corporate buyer, and we're going to slow down on product development for the end user. But it was a very hard decision I was just unwilling to make.
Interesting.
And by the time I made it, we had a competitor that was just so much better at selling to the enterprise than us.
Got it. How was the like organization like inside of the organization? From outside, you guys are growing so fast. Everything was kind of growing. Everything was fine. But sounds like it's true that you guys are doubling or growing really fast. But at the same time, competition shows up, or losing product market fit, those kind of challenge happen as well. Like, how was the inside of organization like, during this journey?
Gosh, there was a lot of things. I think if you bump into any former PlanGrid folks, I'm sure they would tell you wholeheartedly that it was a happy place. And I think founders can be so critical of themselves, right? So yes, there was a lot of things that we did right and the culture was good. But I think by the time we got to like almost 500 people, there was a certain amount of infighting. And I think the infighting stems from people feeling like they're moving faster than their peers, that they can be moving at such a velocity that there can be some arrogance as a part of it because they feel that everyone is so slow and just not up to speed as them. I think most of the infighting was some version of like, I don't agree with this product roadmap, and I think product is making the wrong decision, or some version of like, we could grow faster if marketing was giving us better leads. So it's more like one team versus the other team. And I think this comes really naturally when you pass Dunbar's number of 150 people. That's actually really hard to feel like a team because the human capacity for even remembering people's names, it's limited. There's a limit to it, and that number is Dunbar's number. And so once you get past that, you're so trying to find your own tribe within a company that you maybe become like my department versus your department. And when things go wrong, and for us, it was just like, slowing down from 150% growth to 80% growth, right? It's still objectively growing fast, but not as fast as we used to be. And certainly when we're staring at a competitor that's growing 300%, that feels bad. And when it feels bad, it's very easy to start pointing fingers at each other. So
I see.
that's how the inside looked like. I mean, this is, I'm telling you like the worst of the company, right? This wasn't true all over the board, but it was enough for there to be a certain blast radius to slow us down.
I
And
see.
it's highly toxic and highly damaging in startups and in companies, I think, when you have this like me versus them mentality.
Anything you're doing today at TigerEye that you're trying to be intentional, thoughtful to avoid kind of those things would potentially happen, when you scale, even further at TigerEye, based on learning from PlanGrid?
Yeah. Ralph and I retired in March 2020. It's kind of crazy, out of PlanGrid and Autodesk into a worldwide lockdown. And we just walked around all the time. That's all we did. If you didn't remember, we just walked around in circles and we started dissecting everything that worked and didn't work at PlanGrid and what we would do differently. And it comes down to people. We talked about the types of people and the characteristics that we wanted to work with again. Many of whom we've now recruited to TigerEye. And we also talked about the handful of people, because there weren't that many, the handful of people that we would never work with again. And why is it that they're so talented, but that we just don't want to work with again? And we really itemized the personality and the character traits. And what you get is something very black and white of like, here are our set of core values that are non-negotiable. And so getting to do this a second time around, we started the company with core values before we even locked down the lane that we were building in. We had our core values written, and not only do we have our core values, we also have another document that clarifies the core values, and it's called How We Work Together at TigerEye. And it's written in a way where you just can't misinterpret. So it says things like, I will walk it like I talk it. I will never speak destructively behind my teammates' back. If I have a problem with them, I'm going to go talk to them like professionals, because I will have the trust that we can have the hard conversations. And, it ends with, if I see my colleague not following our commitments to each other, then I'm going to correct them on the spot. And I would expect them to do the same thing to me. And so what this gives you is a joint way of working together. And it just like de-risks a lot of potential drama that can happen. Because everyone's very different, but everyone's operating from the same level.
Did you have core values at PlanGrid as well?
We did, but we didn't live by them. So I'll give you an example. We had this core value called no assholes. And then eventually HR would come in and they're like, you can't use that word. It's no jerks. I'm like, okay, no jerks. So we said no jerks, except, those 5 people I told you about that we would never hire again, they were totally jerks.
Hmm.
They were just good at their jobs. And so what I was signaling to the team was, hey, if you just perform for Tracy, you can get away with murder. And by the way, those other 4 core values are complete bullshit. Like you don't have to follow them because clearly we've got jerks in the building and Tracy's not firing them, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. So yeah, maybe I should have asked a little earlier, but can you tell me a little bit about your new company, TigerEye? What is it? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so all I know to do is build tools and solutions that help me with my last job. So TigerEye is the software solution that I wish I had while we were growing PlanGrid. We've built a business simulation engine that helps you with sales scenario planning, that helps you with segmentation and territories and pipeline management. And we really care about time. So we have a deep understanding of your historicals. We understand your present day business, and we piece all of that together and simulate and project your future out. So what that means is that the weeks and months it takes someone to generate a go-to-market plan on spreadsheets, we've reduced that down to minutes.
Wow.
So everything's automatic because the best predictor of your future is how you've performed in the past. And I would say that's true for hiring too. Like the best predictor of an executive working out is, have they done the job that you've wanted them to do before? And it's true for so many things.
It's awesome. And in terms of target buyers, do you focus on enterprise buyers or SMB or any type of business?
Yeah, it turns out everyone needs to track their business. Everyone needs to put a plan in place. So we work with mostly mid-market companies, but we also have SMB folks working with us and one big enterprise customer working with us.
Got it. And you currently focus on US market, or can Japanese companies use your product as well?
If you're using Salesforce or HubSpot, yes, you can use our product as well.
Awesome. I think Japan is the second most revenue for Salesforce right now. So hopefully.
Okay, so these companies will know what we're talking about. The vulnerability of Salesforce is that they don't account for time. So that the moment a sales rep types something into an opportunity and hits save, it wipes out the history. Well, is the history interesting? Because what has the sales rep been doing over time? Because at PlanGrid, we had enough sales reps where you would stare at pipeline. It's like, wait, pipeline's been looking okay. But then the last 2 weeks of the quarter, it just looked like $5 million from the pipeline disappeared. So what I really wanted to learn from my last company was like, I'm pretty sure there's a few sales reps I've just been fudging the numbers all quarter long and then just cleaning it up the last week of the quarter. Well, with TigerEye, because we go into CRM and we back up everything every hour, we know what's changed. We learn from every rep behavior, every opportunity behavior, every account behavior, and we can see who's been consistently sandbagging and who's been consistently overcalling. And we actually have a strong opinion of where each rep will clock out at, depending on their behaviors and their historical performance.
That's awesome. So it sounds like PlanGrid was more like vertical kind of SaaS, right? And then TigerEye is more like horizontal SaaS that almost any organization who use CRM kind of should be a customer eventually. But any different type of, management or go-to-market, anything you're learning about the, managing both vertical and then horizontal SaaS so far?
Yeah, there's major differences. Certainly the industry, like having built for construction and now building for go-to-market teams is very different. The profiles are different. But for me, it's enterprise software. We're building tools to help people do their jobs better, and we're trying to just help them find productivity. I think the biggest difference, there's for sure, as you mentioned, there's for sure industry differences, but it's less of like a vertical versus horizontal. It's probably the biggest difference is the technology changes. We really benefited from mobile coming into market and building mobile first with our last company. And now we're benefiting from a whole AI wave. And we use AI in 2 ways. One is the old school way, which is simulation theory and machine learning to help predict the future. And then we're also using the new school AI to basically build a business chat box, right? You have an ad hoc question, you just type it into a box, and then it answers your question. And where we're really, really excited about is when it comes to businesses, you can't afford hallucination. And we've really thought through how AI is going to hallucinate or just misunderstand the question. I'll give you one example. When you go to a business AI and you ask something like, hey, where are we at with our business? Well, this question is very contingent upon time. You ask, how's our business doing today? Okay, are you talking about today in the last 24 hours? You talking about the last month, last quarter? Or are you talking about like this year to this point? Time is a really important part of that question. And this is where we're really strong at. So probably the biggest difference between PlanGrid and TigerEye is that we were in a feature to feature based battle with PlanGrid, where we were just like, whoever can build out the most features for construction wins. And that's like number one, right? And that's why we merged with Autodesk, because together we had a much broader feature set. At TigerEye, we're very much focused on an architectural battle. So, you look at flat databases and like spreadsheets on steroids, we're literally saying your architecture is stupid and ours is much smarter because we are aware of time. And when it comes to business decisions, time is such an important factor that these flat databases don't even account for. And we're set up to do really cool AI operations that are impossible on flat databases.
Got it. Wow, that's very interesting. Thank you. And then in terms of hiring, sounds like you made some hires from the people you used to work at kind of PlanGrid. Do you see, like, especially like, let's say salespeople, do you think it's almost same as, as long as they're in the tech startup, they can sell the next product kind of pretty easily? Or do you think, having experience in the industry, having selling something like construction, having sold something like CRM product, like, do you think those kind of industry experience matter a lot, in terms of hiring?
I do think so. I do think it's really nice when someone comes to you with, industry like decades of experience selling into your space. But it's also nice to have the teammate who is highly curious and hardworking, because they'll figure it out. They will just come in, learn the industry, be very curious about it, become experts in a small amount of time, and then start running. So I think it's really, really nice to have. But if you know really great people that are from other industries, it might be really beneficial to have that type of hunger and drive and curiosity and hard work ethic. I would say those are also really important, if not a little bit more important.
Interesting. Do you think that applies to the executives hiring as well?
Gosh, I think it would depend. What do I think? I think that domain expertise is really important for engineering. But if you have an engineering executive who's just up to speed on the latest technology and is just like, that's what they do on their free time, then maybe it's okay that they're choosing a completely different architectural stack. So maybe
Got it.
that's not true.
Interesting.
Sales and marketing. I mean, you never want someone to bring their old playbook and then jam it into your company because it might not fit. So
Right.
I think it's nice to have, if it's relevant, their experience and they're still current enough. I do think it's very valuable, but it doesn't replace like the key personality traits that I think are important in every teammate, including executives, which is like that hunger, that drive to win, and that drive to just keep trying. Like they'll fall on their face and they'll just get back up and they'll start running again because they're like, there's work to do, right? I
Got it.
think that type of personality is actually really, really important for startups
That's
because
awesome.
things are going to go wrong, and then the
Right.
market changes, technology change, everything in the world changes. And it's how fast can you adapt, and do you have that desire to win? Can you see this future that you want to achieve together, and then go from there?
Got it. Thank you. In terms of executives hiring, anything you learned from PlanGrid days that you're applying to TigerEye's, hiring? Anything you're trying to repeat? Anything you're trying not to repeat from the PlanGrid days in terms of executives hiring?
We try to have a really good interview process. I think having interviewed like thousands of people now, and having just a really great HR leader who has put our process in place, I do want every experience to be, our pleasure to say no. I want everyone coming in, meeting us, to want to work for TigerEye. And I think I wanted that at PlanGrid too, but I think it was different. Like we just weren't as crisp on our processes. And so your second time around, you just do things a little bit better because there were things that annoyed you at the last company.
Right. Any specific example you can think of that you're doing right now that you kind of didn't do at PlanGrid in terms of hiring process?
The hiring process. I think our interview questions are much more crisp. There's only a couple vectors we're evaluating people by, and it's not like 5 people are asking the same questions. Like we're very intentional. Like, hey, you're gonna test them on culture. You're gonna test them on the technical stuff. You're gonna focus on, we saw these flags. We just want to make sure they're not there. So either they're there or not, but you're in charge of finding it out. So there's probably an interview panel of like 3 to 5 people, and we're very intentional on what people are looking for.
I see.
And, yeah, and that just makes the whole process smoother, right? And then like, okay, this person is dedicated to selling. We're all in sell mode, really. And we want it to be our pleasure to say no, because we want everyone to want to work here.
Got it. That's awesome. In terms of like org structure, I know that you've thought a lot about designing org structure, whether it's the hierarchy or title, those kind of stuff. But anything you learned from PlanGrid that you're doing differently at TigerEye in terms of the org structure?
Well, we're still a very young company at TigerEye, so it's hard to compare. We launched only 2 months ago. We're in a lot of ways we still separate ourselves at this stage. I would say when we're 30 people at PlanGrid and 30 people at TigerEye now, we did, at PlanGrid, we were like so arrogant. We're like, you're either in operations or you're in engineering and there's no titles. And we were so proud of this fact. And we're so creative about how we led the company. And this is a big lesson learned, actually. It's okay to be creative, of course, but focus all your creative energy and juices on the problem you're solving for your customers. Don't be creative about org design. There's a reason why MBAs exist. There's a reason why there's whole degrees on like organizations, right? There's other people have done this before, just follow them. Like at TigerEye, what are we doing differently? For start, we really do think of us as like operations and engineering as well, but everyone has titles because people care about that. Not much that comes to mind, but this will be different, as we grow. And maybe when we grow to like 500 people, I'll have a better answer for you.
Got it.
I'll
Thank you.
compare the 2 companies.
Yep. Awesome. And one thing I realized was I think you were in stealth for 2 years for TigerEye, is that right? Was that intentional? Like, did you like before you knew that it's gonna take at least 2 years to be in stealth, or like what was your thought process when you decided how to be stealth for early days?
Yeah, I have a 2-year-old daughter. So part of that 2 years was really me and my husband actually going on, because we're a husband and wife team, going on maternity and paternity leave and taking care of a child. But it did take us probably a few months longer to build out the whole platform because our architecture is complicated and there's a lot to it. And we also built for scale. And it just took us longer than I thought it would. In hindsight, PlanGrid was it was complicated for its time in 2011, even through like 2018. But it's a much simpler product than TigerEye. Again, I think it's because the difference between a feature-based company versus like an architectural-based company.
Right. Now you think back, was there any pros and cons to being stealth for 2 years? Did it give you a lot of time to be thoughtful, build product, or?
We did. We were much more thoughtful. I think we were so hacky at PlanGrid that we were releasing features very fast, and we're releasing features very fast at TigerEye also. But all the code that we were writing early days for PlanGrid was unusable. It was like a whole spaghetti mess of code. And so for many years in there, our users felt like they weren't getting new features. And so Ralph's, I think, our CTO's bar for quality is much higher at TigerEye, mostly because he doesn't want to be stuck in tech debt hell for as long as we were at PlanGrid, and so that we can build much faster. So we're always thinking about scale. We're always thinking bigger for the company, which means the quality is just much higher at TigerEye.
That's awesome. I wish you guys existed when I was running Fond so that I could have used them then.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. In terms of investors and board, I remember, I think you raised like 3 or 4 rounds at PlanGrid, and you raised another one in TigerEye. But anything you're trying to do differently, or anything you're trying to make sure this time to choose the right investor, choose the right board, so that you can run the kind of healthy organizations?
What's my advice here? When it comes to like fundraising and board composition, I would just say be in fundraising mode or not be in fundraising mode, because it's really hard to grow the company and try to sell a piece of it at the same time. It's very distracting. Time box it, because I really think time kills all deals. If word gets out in the street that you've been fundraising for like 8 months, the person who's meeting you at month 8 will think that this is clearly a bad deal, or else you would have closed the round 6 months ago. And so, it's really important to organize your meetings in a way where you're basically meeting as many people as possible. And then if it doesn't work out, either you close a round or it doesn't work out. And if it doesn't work out, you just go back to work and you focus on building, because revenue will attract investors. In terms of board dynamics and board composition, I just think it's really important to have a broad perspective of opinions. So if you are adding investors to the board, it's also really important to add independents to the board. And the independents are supposed to, they're exactly what it sounds like. They're supposed to vote differently. They're supposed to have an independent opinion, and they will vote differently than the investors, because they're not incentivized in the way that investors are. And I just think they will give you a much more objective opinion on how the company should be ran, or the important decisions that are need to be made. And that starts with recruiting for the areas that you're weak on. Hopefully you're recruiting former operators or current operators who have like done the job that you're trying to do. And then you really look at the areas that you're weak on. So we were building a B2B enterprise SaaS company, except that I didn't really feel like I understood SaaS. And so we recruited George who was formerly CEO of Salesforce, because he was known as a SaaS expert. And then the company got big enough to a point where I was dealing with a lot of high egos and personalities and managing the exec team that was very experienced. And maybe several of them wanted my job. And I just didn't know how to handle those types of personalities. So I recruited Carol, who's an experienced operator. And she was really my first phone call when it came to like managing my exec team. So you figure out like what areas you're hurting the most, or what areas you want to strengthen up. And then you recruit that independent to advise you, the CEO, and the rest of the exec team.
That's awesome. Cool. Any different thoughts around like exit? Now it's the kind of second company you're running. Like, do you feel differently about, you got to sell your company or something like that? Or are you in for the long term more than PlanGrid? Any different sort of thoughts in terms of kind of exit of the company, or that's not something you don't think
It's
about
so
too
funny
much?
because even saying the words like exiting and like acquisition gives me a little bit of PTSD, just because, and it was like it's a meaningful outcome. They were like good employers, but my year there at a public company was like a hard year for Tracy. And I think this is true for all founders. It's like what makes us good founders makes us terrible public company employees. Like I felt like I had to ask 10 people before I could sneeze into a tissue, right? I needed to ask for permission to do anything. And that's just the opposite of how founders behave, right? And to them, they're like, what is this crazy person doing here telling me everything is breaking and wrong? And it's like, because it is. What are you going to do about all these broken things? And they're like, but it's not broken. We've been doing this for 40 years. So you can imagine, we were everyone was very happy for Tracy and Ralph to exit the building.
Got it. How long did you stay?
I only stayed for a year. We were supposed to stay for 18 months, and I think we only lasted like 14 months.
Got it. I stayed for only 8 months, so I know how
Yeah,
it feels.
exactly. Yeah. You know how it goes.
Yep. Awesome. Any last advice, message to founders in Japan who are trying to be like you in the future?
My last parting advice is building startups is really, really hard. And the highest leverage that we can have is taking care of ourselves first. Because if we can take care of ourselves, then we can take care of everything around us, including our families and the company. And it took me 10 years to learn this. I mean, I was just like, my health was the last thing I thought about. But I think if I was healthier during PlanGrid, I would have for sure been a better CEO. I would have had more energy to solve problems, right? But even the simple things of remembering to eat and like remembering to go, maybe you don't have to like full on exercise, but like go outside for a walk, go clear your head and go, be near trees, that kind of thing. Whatever it is, everyone's different, of course, but please, please take care of yourself, take care of your mental health and your body, and then you'll just do a better job as a startup founder.
Great advice. Thank you, Tracy, for taking time today. That was awesome.
Thank you, Taro.